everyone, I'm Matt. Weird things have been happening. A lot of it, I can't even say that it's not paranormal. A few nights ago, I was talking to my dad I called my dad just to say goodnight and everything. And when we were talking, he said, thank you and yes, in his own voice from my end of the phone. And I didn't hear it. And then I called my mom a few minutes later and just to say goodnight because I was here and downstairs and she heard hi or something in her voice. I'm like, okay, because I don't hear this. And then I was looking through my pictures of my dog that something told me to. And as I go to a short video I recorded of her barking at nothing on the couch, as I turn the camera, you can hear a female's voice saying something. I wish I could incorporate this into the video. I don't know how to do that. So if anybody knows how to do that, please let me know because I think it's on my computer, but I don't know. And then I was watching South Park a day ago, and the light above the oven turns on. This is the first time that ever happened. Yes, we've had lights randomly turn on without anyone touching them. The light above the table, the fan light, and a light upstairs randomly has turned on many times. But it hasn't happened in a while. And then the kitchen oven light turns on, and that has been the first time that has happened that I remember. So I don't know what the flip is going on, but yeah, looks like the spirits in my house are saying hi. And the other day, my mom asked if it's okay to sell my brother's bed to a family who unfortunately had their house burned down by an accidental fire. And she asked for a clear yes or no answer. And she waited. And while watching a cooking show, she got her yes. So I'm like, hey. But with all that being said, weird things have been happening again. And normally I shouldn't be afraid, but they haven't happened in a long time. So it kind of made me jump a little bit, if that makes sense. But anyway, let's continue the stories and maybe let me know what's what happened. I don't know. Let's just hope they don't. Or do. I don't know what I want. But let's start this. The Tower of London, officially His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London, is a historical society castle on the north bank of the River Thames in London, England. It lies within the London Borough of the Tower Hamlets. And if I pronounce anything wrong, please forgive me. I always wanted to go on overseas, but don't really have the money to at the moment. And probably not for a long time. Which is separated from the eastern edge of the square in the middle of the city of London by opening space known as Tower Hill. It was founded toward the end of 1066 as part of the Norman conquest. The White Tower, which gives the castle its name, was built by William Conqueror in 1078 and was initially represented the symbol of operation. A grand palace early in its history is served as a royal residence. The tower is a complex of several buildings with two concrete rings of defense walls and a moat. There is There were several phases of expansion, mainly under King Richard I, Henry III, and Edward I in the 12th and 13th centuries. The Tower of London was designed several times, and controlling it has been important in control it has been important in controlling the country. However, I cannot read tonight. The tower has served an armory, a treasury, a menagerie, and the home of the Royal Mint, and public record office, and the home of crown jewels of England. I really hope that was my hair. From the early 14th century until the reign of Charles II, the 17th century monarch would traditionally prepare several nights at the tower, and then a procession from the Westminster Abbey for their coronation. And if it's the one I'm thinking about, my nanny, grandmother on my father's side, has actually been there because she was born and raised in Britain. And in the picture that she has, if it's the right building I'm talking about, is just absolutely beautiful. In the late 15th century, the princes in the tower were housed at the castle when mysteriously disappeared, presumed murdered. The tuners of the tower was used as resident, and despite attempts to refortify and repair the castle, its defense lagged behind developments to deal with artillery. The citizens of the castle was used as a prison was the 16th and 17th century, when many figures had fallen to disgrace, such as Elizabeth I before she became queen. Sir Walter Raleigh and Elizabeth Throckmorton were held within its walls. This use has led to the phrase "sent to the tower." Despite his enduring reputation as place of torture and death, popularized by the 16th century, religious propagandists, and the 19th century and 20th century, executions were more commonly held on the Tower Hill north of the castle, with 112 occurring over a 400-year period. In the latter half of the 19th century, institutions such as the Royal Mint moved out of the castle and to other locations, leaving many buildings empty. Anthony Shelvin and John Taylor took up the opportunity to restore the tower to what felt like the medieval appearance. In the First and Second World Wars, the tower was used again as a prison to witness the execution of 12 men for expendence. After the Second World War, damage caused during the Blitz was repaired. The castle reopened to the public. I think it was during WW2 when my nanny was 5 or 4, something like that. She told me that she would be shining her dad's shoes on the back porch of their home when the bombs started going off, the sirens started going off, and the planes were just going over. Her mom grabbed her and ran to the bomb shelter that they had, and I was just sitting there listening to these stories like, wow, she lived through that. Which is incredible. And I don't even know how to say incredible in a way that would make sense, but I just listened to a lot of her stories, and I don't know why, but I love the history of World War II and the Civil War. They speak to me. I don't know why, but I've always been attracted to that part of history, those parts of histories, and I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm weird like that. I don't know. Today, the Tower of London is country's ninth most popular tourist attraction, with 2,817,852 visitors in 2025. Damn, so last year. Under the ceremonial charge of the Constable of the Tower, operated by the resident governor of the Tower of London and keeper of the Jewel House, and guarded by the William Wander, the property is cared for by the Charity of the Historical Palaces is reported as a World Heritage Site. Victorious at the Battle of the Hastings. I thought it was about to say Huntington. So I'm like, wait a minute, are we talking about Conjuring 2? And the reason why I can't remember a lot my research is because I've done a lot the past few... It's my hair. I've done a lot for the past few weeks, and even went to a Comic-Con. And I'm like, I need to get these videos up and running. The castle along the way, but took a circuitous route towards the tower. Excuse me, this is embarrassing. Only when he reached the Canterbury, then he turned towards England's largest city. As the fortified bridge into London was held by Saxon troops, he decided instead to ravage Southwark before commuting his journey around southern England. A series of Norman victories along the route cut the city's supply lines, and in December of 1066, isolated and intimidated its leaders, united London without a fight. Between 1066 and 1087, William established 36 castles, all throughout. The reference of the Domesday book indicated that many were founded in the suburbanites. With me pronouncing all of these names wrong, which again, I apologize. My nanny would be, that's not how you pronounce it. I just see her from heaven yelling at me now like, girl. The Normans undertook what we describe as the most expensive concrete promenade of castle building in the whole history of the feudal Europe. Europe. There were multiple buildings servicing as fortifications, used as base of operation in enemy territory, centers of administration, and residences. William sent an advance party to prepare the city for his entrance to celebrate his victory and found a castle. In and found a castle in the woods of William biographer William Poitiers. And certain fortifications were completed in the city against the relentless of the hue and brutal populace. For he, William, realized that it was the first importance to overwee the Londoners. At the time, London was the largest town in England. The foundation of Westminster Westminster Abbey and the Old Palace, the Westminster under Edward the Confessor, had marked it as a century of governance. And the prosperous port castle in London, Bunyard Castle and Montfaucon Castle were established at the same time. The fortification, when it later became known as the Tower of London, was built onto the southeast corner of the Roman town walls, using them as a preferred maritime defense. With the river Thames providing additional protection from the south. This earliest phase of the castle would have been enclosed by a ditch and defended by timber palisades, and probably had a combination suitable for William. Most of the early Norman castles were built from timber, but then the end of the 11th century, a few, including the Tower of London, had been renovated or replaced with stone. Work on the White Tower, which gives the whole castle its name, is usually considered to have begun in 1078. However, the exact date is uncertain. William Gundefort, Bishop of Rochester, responsible for construction, although it may not have been completed until William's death in 1087, the White Tower is the earliest stone kept in England, and was the strongest point of the castles, and was the strongest point of the early castle. It contained grand accommodations for the king. At the least was probably finished by the year 1100, when the Bishop Ranulf Flairburn was imprisoned in there. Flairburn was loathed by the English for exacting harsh taxes. Although as the first recorded prisoner held in the tower, he is also the first person to escape from it. Using a smuggled robe secreted in a butt was also the first in a butt of wine. I can't even follow my sentence right now. I am not even tired, as you can probably tell. I don't know what's going on with me right now. He was held in a luxury permanent servants, but only on the 2nd of February 1101, he hosted a banquet for his captors. After playing them with drink, when no one was looking, he would lower himself from the secluded chamber out of the tower. Then the escape came as such a surprise to the contemporary hurler accused of the Bishop of Worcester. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records that in 1097, King William II ordered the wall to be built around the Tower of London. It was probably built from stone and likely replaced the timber palisade that arched around the north and west sides of the castle. Between the Roman wall, the Thames, and the Thames, the Norman conquest of London manifested itself not only with a new ruling class, but in a way that the city was structured. The land was confiscated and redistributed amongst the Normans, who also brought over 100 zoos for financial reasons. The zoos arrived under the direct protection of the crown, as a result of which the Jewish communities were often found close to the castle. The Jews were used the castle as a retreat when threatened by anti-Jewish violence. The death in 1135 of Henry I left England with a disputed succession, although the king had persuaded his most powerful barons to swear support for the Empress Matilda. Matilda. God, I know that movie too, and I should know how to pronounce that name. I am sorry, everyone. I am stuttering, and please forgive me. But a few days after Henry's death, Stephen of Blois arrived from France to lay claim to the throne. The importance of the city and its tower is marked by the speed at which he secured London. The castle, which had not been used as a royal residence for some time, was usually left in charge of the constable. And if you guys don't know this, a constable is literally what they call the police in England. I know that from watching The Conjuring 2. And yes, by now you should know I love horror movies. I blame my friend in Arizona. Also post held its time. A post held at the time was Geo Referee de Mandeville, as the Tower of London was considered an impregnable fortress and strategically important position, possessing a highly valued Mandeville. I've been reading villain books from Disney, like the author wrote the side of the villain story, and when I see this name, all I can think of is Madame Deville, which I just finished the story of Cruella Deville, which, yeah, I kind of see why the villains turned evil in the first place. I'm like, damn, they had it hard. Madame Neville exploited it, selling his allegiance to Matilda after Stephen was captured in 1141 at the Battle of Lincoln. Once his support wanted, the following year he resold his loyalty to Stephen. Known through his role as a constable at the Tower, Mandeville became the richest and most powerful man in England. When he tried to say the same ploy again, this time holding secret talks with Matilda, Stephen had arrested him, forced him to concede control of his castles, and replace him with one that was most loyal to his supporters. Until then, the position had been hereditary here directly originally held by Geo Freire de Deville, but the possession authority was such that form Then it remained in its hand of opportunity of the monarch. The possession was usually given to someone of great importance, who might not always be at the castle due to other duties. Although the constable was still responsible for maintaining the castle and its garrison from the early stage and subordinated to help with this duty. The lieutenant of the tower and constables also had a civic duty related to the city. Usually, they were given control of the city and responsible for levying taxes, enforcing the law, and maintaining order. The creation in 1191 of the position of Lord Mayor of London removed many of the constable's power. And at the time led to friction between the two, the Tower of London became established as one of the most popular tourist attractions in the country. It has been a tourist attraction since at the least the Elizabethan period, when it was one of the sights of London that foreign visitors wrote about. The tower steadily gained popularity with the tourists throughout the 19th century, despite the opposition of the Duke of Wellington to visitors. Numbers became so high that in 1851, a purpose-built ticket office was erected. By the end of the century, over 500,000 were visiting the castle every year. Over the 18th and 19th century, the Palatial buildings were slowly adapted for other uses and demolished. Only the Wakefield and St. Thomas Towers survived. The 18th century marked an increasing interest in England's medieval past. One of the effects was the emergence of Gothic revival architecture. In the tower's architecture, this manifested when the New Horse Armory was built in 1825. Against the south base of the White Tower. It featured elements of the Gothic revival architecture such as basements. What other buildings were remodeled to Marx the style, and Waterloo barricades were described as castellated Gothic of the 15th century. Between 1845 and 1885, the institutions such as Mint, which was held inhabited the castle for centuries, moved to other sites. Many post-medieval structures left vacant were demolished. In 1855, the War Office took over responsibility for manufacturing and storage of the weapons from the greater interest in the history of the Tower of London. Public interest was partly fueled by contemporary writers whom the work of William Harrison anti-works. A vivid image of the underground torture chambers and the device for extracting confessions that stuck the public immigration. Ensign works also played another role in the tower's history, as contested as Beauchamp Tower should be open to the public so they could see inscriptions from the 16th and 17th century prisoners. Working on this suggestion, Anthony Salvin refurbished the tower and then the program for the comprehensive restoration and the behests of Prince Albert. Calvin was succeeded in the work of the Johnson in the work by Johnson Taylor. When a feature did not meet his expectations of medieval architecture, Taylor would ruthlessly remove it. As a result, several important buildings which the castle pulled down and its some cases post-medieval internal decoration removed. Although only one bomb fell on the tower at the First World War, the Second World War left a larger mark. On September 23rd, 1940, during the Blitz, high explosive bombs damaged the castle, destroying several buildings and narrowly missing the right tower. After the war, the damage was repaired and the Tower of London was reopened to the public. 1747 bombing in the White Castle Montour room left one person dead and 41 injured. No one claimed responsibility for the blast, but police investigated suspicion that the IRA was behind it. In the 21st century, tourism is the tower's primary role, with the remaining routine military activities. Under the Royal Logic Corps, having mooned down the latter of half of the 20th century and moved out of the castle. However, the castle is still home to the regional headquarters of the Royal Regiment of Fluister, and the museum dedicated to its producer, the Royal Fluisters. Also, a detachment of the providing King's Guard at Buckingham Palace still mounts the guard at the tower with a yeoman wonders takes part in the ceremony of the keys each day. On several occasions throughout the years, gun salutes are fired from the tower by the Honorable Artillery Company. These consist of 62 rounds for royal occupations and 41 on the other occupations. Since the year 1990, the Tower of London have been cared for by the independent charity Historic Royal Palaces, which receive no funding from the government or the crown. In 1888, the Tower of London was added to the UNESCO and protected list of World Heritage Site in recognition of the global importance, help conserve and protect its site. However, recent developments such as construction and skyscrapers nearby have pushed the towers behind adding the United Nations Heritage and Danger List. The remaining of the medieval palace have been open to the public since 2006, where visitors can explore the restored chambers. Although position of the constable on the tower remains in the highest position held at the tower, the responsibility of day-to-day administration is delegated to the resident governor. The constable is appointed a 5-year term. This primarily a ceremonial post today by the constable is also a trustee of the historic royal places and the royal armories. General Jordan Messenger was appointed constable in 2022. At least 6 ravens are kept at the tower at all times, and according to the belief that if they are absent, the kingdom will fall. They are under the care of the Raven Master, one of the Yi Omen wonders, as well as having ceremonial duties. The Yi Omen wonders provided guide tours around the tower. With all this history that has happened over the years, the Tower of London is probably one of the most haunted places in London. Probably one in the top 5. But during my research, I found only 5 of the main stories. Anne Boleyn, perhaps one of the most famous ghosts of the tower. Anne Boleyn was the second wife of Henry VIII, is often seen wandering the grounds, particularly near the chapel of St. Peter in Venezuela, where she was buried after her execution in 1536. Witnesses have reported seeing her headless figure, sometimes carrying her head under her arm. One soldier in 1864 claimed that he had confronted her ghost, only to have his bayonet pass through her. And the second is the princess in the tower. Edward V and his younger brother Richard of Shrewsbury were famously imprisoned in the tower and mysteriously disappeared in 1483. Their ghosts are said to haunt the Bloody Tower, where guards have reported hearing the sounds of children giggling and seeing 2 young boys holding hands as they wander the grounds. Number 3. The Guy Fawkes. After his capture for the gunpowder plot in 1605, Guy Fawkes was imprisoned in the tower. His ghost is said to haunt the area, particularly in the Queen's house, where he endured torture. Lady Jane Grey, the 9-Dane Queen executed in 1554, is another tragic figure whose spirit is meant to roam the tower, and reports of her ghostly presence include the sightings of a young woman in white, often near the site of her execution. The haunting and other hauntings. The tower is also home to various other spectral figures, including the White Lady, who is said to appear in the White Tower, the ghost of Thomas Becket, who reportedly struck the tailor's mate with a crucifix. Additionally, countries of experience eerie sensations and sightings of soldiers marching information just adds to the creepy atmosphere of the tower's haunted reputation. The history of London has a long, terrible, tragic history of many, and I would really love to see it. I want to go to the UK, but hopefully one day I can. Anyway, thank you guys for watching my channel and videos. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I am Haunted Girl, and I'll spook you later. And the paranormal is my playground. And until next time, pleasant dreams.